What's up, everyone? True Techno Gamer back here. Finally have some time for you guys. Been a crazy start of the year for me for a lot of reasons and super busy with work and stuff. So, first of all, please, thank you guys so much. Last video talked about the G4 97-inch TV. Put me over the top. I'm well over 1,000 subscribers now. On my way up to 1,100 actually. So thank you. I appreciate that. Try my best. This is still just a hobby thing. I'm just doing this because I want to. So I do appreciate the support, and I would love to kind of keep growing the channel. So please keep supporting me. I'll try to get more content faster if I know you guys are wanting to hear it. So let me know. So for this video, I got to talk about this. Xbox. Essentially conceded the console wars, right? Microsoft announced a bunch of high-profile Xbox games coming to PlayStation, games like Forza Horizon 5. There's heavy rumors about Gears of War and Halo coming soon. We already know Indiana Jones is coming. And then there's also rumored that the new Gears, or there's going to be a Gears trilogy that's coming to PlayStation as well. So Xbox is officially a PlayStation platform developer. Wow. If you're old enough to remember the history of the console space and the console wars like me, that's pretty significant, right? But I want to talk about two aspects of that in particular. So the first is I'm hearing a lot of people talking about, there's a generational gap here. I get it. But there's a lot of people like, why do people care so much about their piece of plastic? Why are there Xbox fanboys, literally breaking up their Xbox consoles up on YouTube and TikTok and Twitter and Instagram or whatever? They're literally breaking them up, throwing them away, talking about, forget Xbox, F Xbox, right? And whatever. Why are they so emotional? Why do they care so much? It doesn't make sense, right? It's just a piece of plastic. More gamers get to play their games, right? Well, true. All of that is true, but I understand that. I definitely get it. As someone who's been playing console games since the mid 80s, and I've been there for every console generation, I definitely get it. So I'm going to talk about that. The second piece here is, again, why is this significant, right? Like, exclusive games have always been one of the key differentiators for consoles, right? Well, for Xbox, is in a very different place this generation than Sony is today and Nintendo is today as well. There is a difference for Xbox putting games on PlayStation than if Sony were to do the same thing and put PlayStation games on Xbox or on Nintendo. And I'm going to talk about what that difference is. A lot of people haven't really been talking on that part of it. So you're going to hear it here from me first. All right. So guys, let's get into it. And again, please like, subscribe. I do pay attention to the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. Am I crazy? Just give me feedback on the channel. I do appreciate it. So, my gosh. Guys, I'm old enough to just remember, like I said, the early days of Nintendo versus Sega. Super Nintendo versus Genesis. And even before that, really, the original Nintendo and the Sega Master System. Who remembers that? How many of you guys remember that? I've been there through all of it, man. And, the idea that Microsoft is like, okay, fine. We just want to get our games out there. So let's start putting everything on PlayStation. Like, this is a pretty significant moment. I know a lot of people, especially the younger crowd of this generation, just like, who cares? It shouldn't have been these divides to begin with. And, I get it. That's kind of the new age thing. I get it. But this is interesting, man. This is fun. In a way, it's like Microsoft is essentially conceding, finally, the console wars and just saying, okay, you know what? We're not winning. We're just playing with everybody, right? In a way. Well, it's a matter of perspective, right? Like I've had some discussions too about, did Microsoft really lose? Did Sony win? Did Nintendo win, right? Like, who's the winner here? Kotaku actually has a pretty good article. I'll link it here. It's kind of funny that talks about, like, basically the console wars are over and nobody really won. right? And you know, it's interesting. Like, check it out. It's interesting when you think about that. Um, in one way, you know, what does winning mean? On the surface of it, winning is if it's about how many consoles, actual physical hardware consoles you put out there. Well, in that regard, Sony wins, I guess, right? I mean, PlayStation 5 is clearly dominating the Xbox Series. Holistically, collectively, you know, the PS2, PS4, and even PS1 all sold over 100 million units, and all were, you know, some of the most successful consoles in history. Xbox has never quite achieved that. The 360 was their most successful most successful generation. I mean, and did a pretty good job. But I don't think they ever crossed 100 million even. Whereas PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4, all sold over 100 million. So in a way, you know, Microsoft never really beat Sony in that regard in terms of pure hardware sales. Now, you could argue that Nintendo's not even really fighting the war. They kind of have carved out their own lane, and more power to them for that. So I kind of look at it that way. Nintendo's kind of in their lane. They got their audience, and they're going to be there regardless. They're not fighting the same type of battles that Sony and Microsoft have been, right? There's also an argument to be said that really the PC in a way has won, right? PC gaming has kind of taken over in terms of being at least front and center now. Every game now is on PC. That's on console is pretty much on PC. Sony is putting their ports even on PC. Xbox obviously has Game Pass on PC. The only company that's not putting their games on PC is the Nintendo. Again, right? Carved their own lane. So, you know, PC gaming is more popular than ever in terms of the numbers of people that play it. I'm hearing a lot of stories about kids of this generation, teenagers, even middle schoolers that, you know, when I was coming up, wanted whatever console was good, the Nintendo, the Genesis, the you know, whatever, PlayStation. And now people are like, oh, I want a PC. Like, build me a PC so they can stream, so they can, you know, connect and play some games. PC is come a long way. And, you know, you can make an argument that they're kind of running the show. Consoles are basically just PC hardware, and all the console games are on PC. Perspective, right? Okay, fine. But in the context of the core, you know, console wars, I mean, Xbox is essentially conceding. Sony is still fighting the good old battle, right? They still were trying to lock down exclusive games because that's always been the number one criteria for differentiating your console and getting more sales. Why do people want to buy your system? Why should they? What do they have to play? You know, what do they have to enjoy? They've been doing that. Obviously, you have a lot of third-party licensing deals on PlayStation this generation, right? And they're not, you know, even putting their games up on the PlayStation Network day one like Xbox is on Game Pass. And they're doing that because they essentially want more people to buy their consoles. Even with their PC ports, they're not releasing those PC ports within the first year. Why? Because they want people, if you really, really want to play the new Spider-Man, the new God of War, the new Last of Us, the game, whatever it is, you got to get a PlayStation and play it there. Or wait a year or two to play it on PC. And that, you know, that's why. They're really still trying to lean in on the console. And, you know, you could argue that that's kind of like a losing effort, right, in today's world. You know, we'll see. But in effect, man, Xbox got into the whole console space. Let's recap. They literally got into the console space to beat Sony, to prevent Sony with the PlayStation 2 at the time from taking over the living room. And they never achieved that. There wasn't a single generation where Xbox really beat Sony. The closest was the 360. In the end, the PS3 still outsold the 360, even though the 360 pretty much led in the US most of the generation. I think when it's all said and done, though, I think even PS3 beat 360 in the US, but they definitely did worldwide, like handedly. And the other generations, the first Xbox and the PS2 was not even close. PS4 dominated Xbox One, and PS5 is dominating the Xbox Series. So Sony wins in a way, right? Now, like I said, there's two aspects to this. The first thing is there's obviously a lot of Xbox fanboys, I'll say, that are kind of butthurt, right? Like they are just literally in their feelings, in their emotions. I loved Xbox, and now, you know, I hate them, and, you know, right? They're going out buying PS5s and stuff like that, right? And people are just like, that's just crazy. That's just ridiculous, right? Now, again, it is obviously somewhat silly. But if you've seen and felt the energy and the passion within the console wars, There's an argument that someone said that, essentially the console wars was started by Sega with the whole Genesis and Nintendo, but they really took the battle directly to Nintendo. Genesis does what Nintendo don't, right? And they all of this stuff and created that divide. You're either Team Sega or you're Team Nintendo. You're black or white, and literally did that. And it kind of carried over, right? And the PlayStation comes out, N64 is over there, Saturn is over there, and PlayStation dominates. And then it's PlayStation 2 basically killing off Sega with the Dreamcast, and fending off Xbox, the first Xbox and the GameCube, and it's kind of been these alliances of where do you want to go. Now, part of that is kind of bred, of course, by the manufacturers, but it also was a cultural thing at the time. And the key thing to me is that you got to remember that historically it was all about the games, and the console games were always the exclusive games were really the key. And throughout all of that time, there was this idea that there was only certain games that you can play on these certain boxes. And if you love those games and love those game developers in some cases or game makers, that's where you wanted to go for the most part, right? You look back at the PlayStation and you saw Final Fantasy VII, you saw Metal Gear Solid, you saw Resident Evil, you saw Tomb Raider, right? And then Gran Turismo and games like that. That was PlayStation. The identity of the console, the identity of that box and of that generation was all about the games. And, you could carry that everywhere else, right? Obviously with Sega, you knew the Sega games, the arcade games, and with the Dreamcast, it was Crazy Taxi and, Sonic, of course, and whatever. And then, of course, Nintendo has Mario Kart, and Smash Brothers, right? And Zelda, etc., etc. That was the identity, guys, right? That's what the console generations were all about. Okay, and the thing is that nowadays the exclusive games are kind of disappearing. I've talked about that on this channel. There's been a ton of articles and media coverage on this issue in the last few years, that the exclusives are kind of no more. Again, Sony has been trying to hold on to them, paying good money to keep things exclusive or timed exclusive, or console exclusive, whatever. But Microsoft has been putting all of their games on PC for a while now. Right? And even the reality is, let's remember, guys, Sony has also been putting games on other systems, right? MLB The Show is a Sony first-party developed game, and it comes out on Xbox and Xbox every year. They've been doing that now for years, right? Sony also released the Horizon Lego game on the Switch this past Christmas season. Okay. So they have been dabbling in this as well, and they're obviously going to continue to do so. But I think they're going to be a lot more selective than obviously what Microsoft is doing, where they're just wholesale. Everything's on PC, and most of their big games are coming to PlayStation now, right? So this idea of and there was a time where even PC had a lot of exclusives. I talked about that on this channel as well. You heard of games like StarCraft and Warcraft, right? And Morrowind and those were PC games, right? Command and Conquer, these kind of games. And nowadays, that's not even the case. Pretty much every game is available on everything. And that's the way of the world in 2025, right? Everything for everybody, that kind of thing. But that wasn't always the case, guys. And there was some fun. Can I say it? There was some fun in these quote-unquote console wars. People say they don't understand how people could be so loyal. There are people, guys, here today in 2025 that have been dedicated and committed to the ecosystem for one platform or another. In some cases for 20, 30 years. There have been people that have been in PlayStation since PS1 back in 1995. We're talking 30 years. There are people that have been invested in Xbox since 2001. We're talking 20, 25 years almost. Right? This is, people have really been invested in this stuff. And, believing and wanting to support what Xbox stands for, multiplayer in games like Halo and Gears, right, and whatever. And, every generation, they're just like, I'm on Xbox. I could be playing on PlayStation. I could be playing on Nintendo. I could be playing on PC maybe. But I just love my Xbox, man. There is an emotional connection to these boxes, to these, not the boxes in terms of the plastic, but again, to the ecosystems, to the games. The games. There are people who literally, talk about nostalgia being strong, who just have such strong memories of playing multiplayer LAN parties, right, with Halo for the first Xbox, with Halo 2, right, and then Halo 3. There are people who grew up and just will remember playing Gears of War for the first time on the 360, right? There are people who established their whole social network and social identity with, Xbox Live, right? 20 years ago. And they have been, literally embedded in that ever since. There's a strong sense of nostalgia. There's a strong sense of identity. I've heard it. I've heard people talk about it. You guys have heard people talk about it. That literally are like, I remember being in grade school, middle school, high school, and even go older. For me, same similar things. People were like, I remember playing Mario, having Mario Kart parties, 4-player, GoldenEye on the N64. I remember first playing Grand Theft Auto on the PlayStation and Resident Evil on the PlayStation and, Final Fantasy 7 on the PlayStation, et cetera, et cetera. Final Fantasy has historically been a PlayStation franchise. And what's interesting in all of this, guys, is that a lot of these games have not been solely exclusive to these platforms. I talked about PlayStation, Metal Gear Solid. That's looked at as a PlayStation game, but Metal Gear Solid has been ported to everything. Metal Gear Solid came out on the Xbox, right, later, and all that stuff. Resident Evil obviously comes out on everything, but people still associate it with PlayStation. Final Fantasy has been ported, again, to Xbox, right? It used to be a Nintendo franchise, right? It's not like it's a Sony thing, but you associate it with, the PS1 generation, at least for the modern Final Fantasy games, the 3D Final Fantasy games. You associate it with that platform and with Sony and the PlayStation as a brand, right? Even though it's been on everything, it's been ported to everything. Final Fantasy is now being ported to PC. But there is a sense of attachment there, as silly as that may sound. So a lot of people, I've seen them, they knew Xbox One was losing and they're just like, you know what, I'm going to go ride or die with Xbox. I'm telling you, I've talked to them. I'm like, why? Like, PS4 is so much better. They just couldn't do it. They just couldn't go over there. They couldn't, spread that love, so to speak. And, they just wanted to believe. Phil Spencer came in every year, almost since he's been there, right now, over 10 years. Every year was all about games. This is the year. Games. Xbox is going to come back and blah, blah, blah. And we just haven't never seen that. Now, Xbox actually has a good amount of games coming out now. They bought up, so many studios. They own like over half the game industry. They technically do have a lot of good games. But they don't have the platform with Xbox consoles to actually reach a certain number of gamers that they want in order to get the return on their investment. If Xbox was in Sony's position right now, they probably wouldn't be doing this. In other words, if Xbox consoles were selling over 60 million units already, they want more, but they probably wouldn't be doing it, at least not this soon. But with Xbox consoles, they just don't have the install base, right, to justify it and to spread it out. They want people playing games. They want to reach as many gamers as possible. All companies do. But this is the only way to do it. But if you grew up and have that nostalgia and have that connection, have those memories, you associate that with that green X. And that's like gone. That's in a way, that's gone away. It's not that Microsoft and Xbox as a whole is gone, but what Xbox stood for is pretty much dying and dead. And that's something to mourn. I get it. I personally have not been the biggest Xbox fan, and I haven't owned all the Xbox systems, but I get it. I get it. And now you kind of like Sony is really just competing with themselves in a way, which isn't good for anybody, right? Like competition breeds innovation and, quality. And Sony was at their best when they had the strongest competition. When the 360 came at them and the PS3 was floundering, that's when they got their stuff together and led into the PS4 generation, which in many ways was their best generation, right? I'm just saying, right? So I feel for you Xbox fans, I do. It is something to mourn. It's a sad day. Xbox as we knew it is no more. It's kind of like, what is the point? What is the point of buying an Xbox console now? And this gets to my second point. So here's the second piece of this, right? So people were like, man, Xbox is putting games on PlayStation, right? And now, again, even I, old school head, right? I would be like, that's great, right? Put your games out there for more people to play. And people say to me, well, you like Sony. What if Sony did that? What if Sony started putting all their PlayStation games on Xbox or Nintendo, right, or whatever? They're already doing it for PC, but what if they started doing it on a console? And here's the thing, right? Here's my answer to that. It would be different if Sony did it. You know why? Because there is something to be said. You can have the model to say, look, we're building our own box. We have our own console. The whole purpose of the console in that regard, as a dedicated gaming machine, which a PC will never be, but as a dedicated gaming machine, is to say, this is where you get the best experience. This is where you go to get the best PlayStation experience. This is where you should go to get the best Xbox experience, even over PC. Not just about specs and frame rates no, that's not what it's about. But the overall experience as a dedicated gaming console device. You can hook it up to your TV, or your PC monitor, have it be pretty seamless, pretty easy, and ultimately get the best experience. And I think that's something that Sony has done a much better job of the last 2 generations. This goes back into what I call those hardware differentiators, right? And this generation, the PS5 has way more differentiators to me than the Xbox Series from a hardware and from a platform perspective. So what do I mean by that? Well, look at the comparison, right? So Xbox puts their games on PlayStation, and the real irony there is that now it can be said that the best way to play Xbox games on console is on PlayStation. How do I say that? Well, even for the base PS5, most cases, the PS5 games run better than the Xbox games. That's been the facts. We're over 4 years in. Most cases, not all, but most cases, if they're pretty close. But if there is any performance differences, it usually is in favor of the PlayStation 5. Now, that's with the base PS5. Let's not forget that there's a PS5 Pro out there, right? So you take Indiana Jones and you take Forza Horizon 5, and now the most powerful console out there in the world today is the PlayStation 5. For PS5 Pro owners, PlayStation 5 Pro. And for PS5 Pro owners, they're going to be able to get a much higher frame rate, better looking 4K 60 plus experience that you just can't get on a base PS5 or Xbox Series X even, right? So that doesn't even take into consideration the differentiators in terms of what Sony has built with the SSD being twice as fast in the PlayStation 5. So even if it's just, hey, Indiana Jones is going to load in half the time on the PlayStation 5 potentially, right? Or Forza might load and have less pop-in because, you can stream faster, right? I'm just saying. Or what about the DualSense, man? What about the DualSense? The DualSense is a differentiator. It does make gameplay experiences different on PlayStation, right? And playing Halo with the DualSense, playing Gears with the chainsaw, right? And the controller shaking with the DualSense, playing Indiana Jones and Doom, Dark Ages with the DualSense. That's an advantage for Sony. I'm sorry. It is, okay? Then you got the whole Tempest 3D audio thing. And people went, but Xbox has 3D audio. It's not the same. Sony has built their 3D audio pipeline from the developer studio to the tools to the SDK to the hardware, where not only is it pretty easy to integrate 3D audio from the development standpoint, which is why nearly every PlayStation 5 game has 3D audio, but the whole Tempest 3D engine is about distributing and making that 3D audio available to everybody. Microsoft has Dolby Atmos, but it's a separate app, and you have to pay a licensing fee and blah, blah, blah. No. Sony, turn on your PS5, hook it up to your TV. You're getting 3D audio from your TV speakers. Hook it up to your soundbar. You're getting 3D audio from your soundbar. Put in any headphone. Put in your Apple Buds. Put in, your Steel Series headphones, or you don't need to have your PlayStation, headphones. Put in whatever you want to do. Guess what? You're getting the 3D audio experience. It's there for everybody, and developer tool set is a lot more streamlined and easier to use. The result is that you just get a better, more consistent 3D audio experience. Again, it has dedicated hardware as well to process that in real time, on the fly. It's a better experience. These are the differentiator, guys. So you tell me, where's the best place to play? You got PS5 Pro, which is the most powerful console, at least through this year. Xbox will probably, rumors say, 2026 is the year they're going to have some kind of new hardware. We'll see. But at least through 2025, PS5 Pro is where it's at. The PlayStation 5 can get you, these experiences with the SSD, faster SSD, and DualSense in particular, and then 3D audio as well. That's the irony here, guys. So when people say if PlayStation did the same thing, I wouldn't care. Yes, more gamers get to play these games, sure. But the best place to play the new God of War, okay, the new Ghost of Tsushima, Ghost of Yote game. If Sony decided today, hey, Ghost of Yote is coming to Xbox, okay, cool, right? So Xbox gamers get to enjoy that. PC gamers, of course, are going to have it. But the best place to play that game is still going to be on the PlayStation 5 console. All right, if it comes to PC, which it will, again, it's going to be off some kind of delay. Right, it might be a year, probably, or whatever. So it's not going to be day and date on PC. And if it came on Xbox, it probably wouldn't be day and date on Xbox. So if you want to play the game, and as good as the game is probably going to be, you're going to want to play it. Get it for your PlayStation, right? And if you're looking at the PlayStation versus Xbox, right, like PlayStation 5 is still going to be the better way to play that game for sure. So that's the thing that you got to keep in mind, and that's what this really is all about. And I think this leads into the next generation. For the next generation, that is going to be the play, right? Where PS6 or whatever, there's going to be another generation of console. Xbox that's the interesting thing here, guys. The Xbox, this isn't like Sega dying with the Dreamcast. Xbox is not dead. The console wars and the Xbox brand as we knew it is over. But Xbox is still making hardware. They still have a new generation coming out. They still are selling and making the Xbox Series consoles right now. Sony is still working on the PS6. So there will be another console generation, but it will look and feel very different than anything we've seen before. That much I can say. And fundamentally, like I said, leading into that, there is going to be a sense that, again, exclusive games are going to be mostly dead, if not completely dead by next generation. And that's fine. But then it's going to be up to Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo to make sure that there is some value in these boxes that they're making still, right? These plastic and silicon have some value. And the value is make sure that it is the best way to play your games. Your first party, your studio games are going to be everywhere, but people should want to buy an Xbox or want to buy a PlayStation to play it there first. That's the goal. And I'm not making that up. Phil Spencer has basically said as much, right? In recent interviews, he's talked about Xbox focusing on hardware differentiation is how he described it, right? That's what he's talking about. This is not about power and specs. The Wii was an extreme example of hardware differentiation. It was like nothing else out there. It brought a completely different experience. It wasn't about pixels and resolution and whatever, but it was a fundamentally different experience. And if you had certain Wii games, you couldn't replicate that experience, even on the more powerful boxes from Microsoft and Sony at the time, right? That's what he's talking about. The Switch is a fundamentally different experience. It's hardware differentiation to be able to play handheld and console basically in the same platform. There have been heavy rumors about an Xbox handheld. I think that imagining something, Xbox along the lines of a Switch, it's probably not out the realm of possibility. Of course, AI will be a big part of the next box. It won't be about just pure hardware silicon. Of course, it probably will be more powerful than the PS5 Pro, for example, but not much. And using a lot of AI stuff to bring new types of experiences. That's what they need to focus on. And I think they know that. Sony as well. They can't just come out with a PS6 that's going to be just another PlayStation. It's going to have a lot of AI focus as well. It's going to be powerful enough. But they need to do other stuff, even to differentiate from the PC. You can't do this stuff on PC either, right? That's what they need to focus on. So I think we'll see that a lot more. But yes, the console wars are dead. So what do you guys think? New generation, old generation. Do you understand why some Xbox fans would be really, really upset now? And why this is a time of mourning for a lot of people, especially for the Xbox fan. As a gamer, man, like I said, I've owned only one Xbox system of my own. Technically, I've had other ones in my house different times, but this is sad. I definitely feel for him. In the Venera, Definitely end of an era. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments. I did appreciate your support. For now, True Techno Gamer. Until the next one, which will be very soon. I'll talk to you guys later.